Good day. This is the Bible Interpreter. Today's subject is going to be about the Old Testament. And we're going to try to explain it in a way that hopefully you can comprehend it. And first of all, let us say that the way that you've been taught that the Old Testament and New Testament of the Bible, let us first say is wrong. And now I got to prove what I just said. Everything that you've been taught about what the Old Testament is, we have to say it is wrong. But now give me a chance to prove that it's wrong. So, that being said, you got to understand that the word testament means witness. So once you understand that a testament is a witness to something, it'll help us to explain a little better. So just like we call it the Old Testament, somebody could also say the Old Witness. So it makes more sense that you can comprehend it better now that I say that it's an old witness. Even though you know the word testament and witness are the same word. As a synonym, an Old Testament, and it's a synonym phrase. It means the same thing. So if it's the Old Testament, it's also called the Old Witness. So what we're saying is, when you read the scriptures from Genesis to Revelation, or you've been taught the scripture from Genesis to Revelation, until you hear something that you hadn't heard before in the manuscripts, everything that you heard in the beginning, we call that the Old Witness. Everybody has to have the witness in the flesh first. That's the old witness of what you read. Everything you read is carnal thinking. When we say the word is made flesh, we're not talking about some physical child being born. We're saying this in a metaphor of like a child that has been born. The word that you conceived was conceived in the carnality of your mind. So we would tell people, just like the first time you witness any seed, the seed doesn't look anything like what it's going to look like when it starts to come up out of the earth. And the earth we're talking about in comparison to is whenever the word starts to come out of your carnal mind. One portion of the word was meant to be buried. We call that the seed, just like a natural seed. The purpose of a natural seed is to be planted in the earth. And the earth that we're talking about is the carnal mind of the believer. They must take the word in their carnality thinking, their carnal thinking, and as they take it in, they don't hope to bring up the same concept as they did when they took it in the first time. Just like nobody who goes to farm and plant a seed in the earth hopes to get what he put down in the earth to come back up. He must expect that there's going to be a change of the form. Just like what Scripture might say when they was on their way from Emmaus, two disciples, they saw Jesus in another form. But most people didn't catch that. Same Jesus, another form. There's a seed form and there's a fruit. And anyone who knows agriculture, you know that the seed and the fruit are one and the same. They're just in two states and two different forms. Not that there's a difference. The seed is just the undeveloped of what's going to be developed later. We call it the fruit. One was meant to go in the earth, and we keep telling that the earth we're talking about is into the carnal mind. There was something that went into your carnal thinking. We call that the word that was made flesh, which is called the seed. But as the word starts to evolve and develop, it's something that's coming out of the earth. We're saying it's leaving the carnal thinking. Not that we're saying something physically happened. We're saying something mentally happened. Because mental stuff is spiritual stuff. Things that happen in your mind. Not that some physical child died and rose again. Just like we say that to die, we're not talking, most of the time when we talk with those people, they're using legal terms for the words that we're using spiritual terms for. They're being legalistic and not understanding that they're being legalistic. And what do I mean by that? I mean that every time that you read a manuscript and you hear something what you would think naturally, that's the legal term for the word. But there's a spiritual term for the same word. So just like I would say, if I'm talking about a seed, I'm talking in parallel to something that's like a seed. Everybody that does know, like I said before, you know that a seed was meant to take into the earth. But the fruit was to evolve from out of the earth. So we're saying that your understanding that you got when you first heard the scripture, that's the first witness of the seed. It's the first testament. And everybody got to receive the first testament because it's the foundation. That's what a seed is. It's the beginning of anything. It is a seed. But as it develops, it becomes fruit. No development, no fruit. If you're still just having the carnal mindset, you have not even started to develop into a spiritual understanding, It's no different than somebody who has a seed and never planted it and expecting something to be different in their life. How can something change you that you didn't get a different understanding of? You have to have a different understanding in order to consider something to be a change. So the seed is a sacrifice, and we call it Christ. But we're not talking about no man. We're talking about the head of every man. And the book teaches that the head of every man is Christ. But the way you have been taught, that's where the stumbling block is at. Because we're telling you, we're speaking in the New Testament, but we're speaking to people who have an Old Testament mindset. We are speaking the New Testament, and we're speaking to people who have an Old Testament mindset. Now understand what we're saying. I'm trying to bring you into a new witness of something that you have formerly not been introduced to. Same word, but it's out of the earth. It's not no longer in the carnal thinking when I speak, because I'm talking about something that rose up from the earth. It rose out of the carnal thinking, and now it's in a higher conscious. So, just as you know that a seed, every seed, not some seed, has one form when it's incubated, and it has another form when it's delivered. How do we know that a person has not been delivered? No matter how much they tell you in the church that you've been delivered, you've been set free. No, we can tell that the person in the spirit has been delivered when their thinking has been delivered. When you're still hearing the word that was made flesh, and all your precepts are legal, everything that you hear, you say this water baptism, you dump somebody in H2O, we can tell that you have not been delivered. But the ones that have been delivered, the same water you talking about that don't contradict the scripture, they'll know that the word is the water. Because we're not talking about legal water. We're talking about something that's spiritual water. But the legalistic person will keep trying to draw you back to the first witness, the Old Testament. And all the Old Testament is, the book tells us that to be carnal-minded is death. So if I only heard the first witness, it's only going to deliver death to me. I need to hear it in the spirit. That's the new witness. Until I hear the New Testament, I don't have the life of the thing. I'm only operating in the death of it. That's why most of the time the scripture will say that we got to be baptized into his death, not into a life. Baptism does not represent the life of Christ. It represents somebody that's sitting under a teaching, hoping for understanding so that they can be revived in it. But until the new witness comes, there is no revival. There's only death being administered. And that's what the letter does. The book tells us that the letter killed. We're saying that the legalistic sense of the word was necessary to bring about an end to your way of thinking. But it's back to what we said. It is what you have witnessed of old, what you call your Old Testament. And when the confusion will come about if you don't pay real close attention to it, we're not witnessing to you the Old Testament. We're speaking the New Testament. We're speaking to that which came up out of the carnal mindset. But witnessing to an Old Testament mind is a struggle because they keep rejecting the New Testament. Because the form of thinking has them thinking that they are bearing witness to something that's true. It's truth in it, but it didn't never say that the word that was made flesh was true. It says it was as the glory. And anyone that got good sense know that anything that's as something is in the character of something that is not that. The book teaches that God called those things that be not as though they were. But if I tell you that something was as the glory, surely you should catch on that that's not it. It's something that was in parallel to something else. And we call that the parables. And it's a new witness that need to be delivered to you though. And if you never get the new witness, your mind never gets delivered. So you'd have what we call no salvation. Because like I said before, Old Testament simplified means an old witness. And where there's an old witness, in order for you to have a new witness, you got to hear something that you didn't formerly hear. So we saying that same manuscripts, when they rightly divided, they develop something just like a seed. You know that to get a fruit from a seed, the seed had to be developed. So the letter has to be rightly divided and develop in another form before you can get a new witness. And what we call the witness is a new understanding. And the new witness is also called a New Testament. But most people are thinking that Matthew through Revelation is called a New Testament. But it's not the New Testament. Paul said he said no other thing than that which the apostles and prophets said before. He ain't saying nothing different. He just bearing witnesses to it But you still can't hear the New Testament until your mind get renewed. No matter what you read about Matthew through Revelation, you're still hearing something of old. You're hearing it in the flesh. You heard it in seed form, but the new witness is the fruit of it. If I took an apple seed and I gave you the seed, and you bear witness that that's an apple seed, then I bring you the apple later, you can say that this is a new witness of the same thing. Not nothing different, it's just the greater witness. It's the fulfillment of it. It's the fullness of what you have witnessed of old. So every time you have heard the scriptures without this spiritual understanding, we count that as an Old Testament, an old witness. And when you start hearing the spirit of it, as what we're expressing now to you, through understanding, they're going to agree with each other. They don't contradict one another. One is just a higher conscious of the same. And I ain't going to go too deep into this one because you might have to wind this back a few times and meditate on it. Until next time, be educated. Bible interpreter.